I am going to talk about money transfers, and of course, to do that, I need to somehow change the slides. The interface is functioning a bit slow, but here we are. Here is the plan. Let's think for a moment about money, and then move to payment services, and then I'll go to the technical parts concerning restrictions with regard to AML and CTF rules, and finally, let's consider the risks. So firstly, have you ever actually asked yourselves the question about what money really is? I don't want to talk from the philosophical perspective. I simply mean the technically. What is money? Well, historically, it was as simple as that. Money was represented by some precious metal, normally silver or gold, and even if the face minted on the coin changed because the king featured on a given coin died, still that piece of metal represented a given value that was honored by pretty much everyone. With time, the concept changed. Today, money is really represented by some electronic it is represented by some electronic number represented in the system, even if we are talking about the classical money, meaning the so-called fiat money. So even in that case, the economic representation is actually shown in a digital form, and in the age of digital economy, obviously, with the advance of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies, indeed, we are really talking about some digital representation of the value that we refer to as money. So let's, this is an important consideration when we move to the payment services. Payment services have been traditionally provided by banks, and here are some very notable examples. And the concept has not changed with the advance of so-called challenger banks or neobanks, which today offer services predominantly, or in some cases exclusively, in the internet. So in that case, these institutions, they can be perceived as more electronical than and being more modern and more digital than the traditional banks. But in reality, even traditional banks, they offer electronic banking solutions. What may be changing very soon, we only see currently the first signs of an actual change that would make a lasting effect, would be the method of ensuring the transfer of money. Currently, you realize that every banking institution, and no matter if we're talking about traditional banks or these challenger banks, they are using a rather old-fashioned system which relies on the so-called SWIFT. Now, SWIFT is an institution in itself, and what it deals with is not handling the transfers. It's just enables a standard communication between financial institutions. So it doesn't really, and as I said, whether we're talking about traditional banks or or digital banks, neobanks, they still rely mostly, for the most part, on this rather old-fashioned system. What we have still in the game are players such as Western Union and MoneyGram, and they really do exactly the same, use the existing technology, and they just rely on an extensive network of agents. So what these guys really do is some complex accounting between the headquarters and the agents, and that's how they handle the money transfers. The advancements in technology are changing are two fronts. One concerns open banking, and in that regard, the change is really minimal when you compare it to SWIFT. What the banks are currently using, at least those modern banks, are APIs, and which stand for application programming interfaces. And here what we're really talking about is an interface that allows a user to log into a single system, single banking system, and then upon granting of their consent to let the bank link to other bank accounts that user has, that user may, just by logging into one platform, they can use a number of platforms and a number of bank accounts held by different banks. So that is really the advantage. Just from technically, it's easier to use to manage your finances when you use these modern solutions. But overall, it is not a substantial change. What has changed is with regard to the use of blockchain. Now, the use of blockchain makes possible something that really does not exist in a large scale so far, but what we may expect to happen is the complete bypassing of these old-fashioned telecommunication organizations, and in this way we can expect a completely new way of ensuring transfers. Now, the most notable example of an operation that relies on blockchain is Bitcoin, of course, and I'll come back to Bitcoin in a minute. Let's just say that the institutions is one thing, is one layer of the entire system, and the other layer is the service providers, the payment service providers, the wallet providers. Here you see a couple of examples of such providers. They're not really banking institutions, financial institutions, but they enable certain services that rely, again, on these traditional systems, always using the SWIFT technology, and they simply are able to process your payments using the existing technology. What is different, and here is what I was talking about for a second when I said that we are really opening a new world of technology, is the blockchain technology. Relying on blockchain, a number of cryptocurrency service providers, such as cryptocurrency exchanges, for example, such as Kraken or Coinbase or Bitfinex, they can process payments, not only using the fiat currencies, and that in that case they still rely on these old technologies, but they can also rely on the blockchain. Because if you want to make a transfer from your, let's say, your digital wallet to a cryptocurrency exchange, then you can do this, and you will bypass the SWIFT system, you will bypass the banking system. You can deal directly with that particular cryptocurrency exchange. And the same thing happens if you just make a transfer from one wallet to another. Here you see the symbol of one such wallet called Mycelium, and that's how you can transfer using this wallet. You can transfer cryptocurrencies, that is the digital value that is stored in that wallet. You can transfer very easily, relying on the blockchain, to another wallet or to a crypto exchange. And this is how it works, as simple as that. The Amisgo and Crypterium and Bankera, they are payment services providers that aim to rely on the blockchain. And these are startups practically, only beginning to work in this sphere, but they are making great advancements. So that was the exciting news. Now here is a down-to-earth reality. You need to understand one thing. The world has changed since the conception of Bitcoin, to the point where cryptocurrencies and the blockchain are the reality that most of the world has already accepted. Banks are developing their own blockchains, and they are also beginning to deal in cryptocurrencies. And it is no longer a big news. What has also changed is the down-to-earth reality that normally lawyers deal in, but it's important for you to understand that the same restrictions concerning the so-called AML programs and KYC procedures, the same restrictions that concern banks, they also concern every crypto exchange, or at least a crypto exchange that is sitting in the jurisdiction where this legislation is treated seriously. And the most important players in the crypto environment, they actually sit in those jurisdictions, and they also abide by the rules. So you need to understand that the same set of rules in most cases with regard to the big players, and they concern not only the banks but also the crypto operators. So here, these technical rules, they mean a number of procedures that are applied by every financial institution or a crypto institution, and they can be boiled down to this: every such institution needs to ensure that they detect any suspicious activity. So they need to implement certain procedures. They need to perform a certain exercise in the risk assessment. So they have to look through their operations and elaborate rules and implement those rules that are aimed at mitigating the risks concerning the AML, so anti-money laundering and terrorist activities. They need to implement those procedures. they have to lay those procedures out. So they have to have internal practices written down. They need to do training of their staff, to let their staff be able to spot those criminal attempts. And they have to run independent audits. What these rules are, what they mean for an average user of any such banking institution or a crypto institution, are the thresholds which are well defined in the various laws internationally, whether we're talking about the EU, the US, or such places as Hong Kong or Australia. In all those places, there are thresholds that are put in place, and above those thresholds, every transaction that exceeds the threshold, or a series of transactions that exceed that given threshold, they are notified to the local regulator, or in some jurisdictions, they're simply registered by the financial institutions. But in most cases, there is an element of automatic notification of the regulator. And what it means in practice, that both the banks and the financial institutions and the crypto institutions and the regulators, they are building a huge databases concerning these transactions that exceed the thresholds that are relatively low, particularly in the business reality. Of course, 15,000 euro, and in case of businesses that even occasionally deal in cash, the threshold is brought down to 10,000 euros. These thresholds are ridiculously low. So you can imagine how massive databases all these institutions are building. How these before we come to the question of transfers, we have to realize that even before making the first transfer, every user of an account needs to be screened by the financial institution where they want to open an account. So there are all these special forms, there are all these special procedures, and there's so much specific information that every user, no matter whether we're talking about an individual or a corporate entity, that they need to provide to those financial institutions. And they have to show this, the source of funds and the source of wealth. They need to explain whether politically exposed or whether they are a US citizen. They need to indicate their tax residence. And in many institutions, they even have to share their photo or share some biometric information. This is how it's done. These are examples of the procedures adopted by these challenger banks. So we're talking about technologically more advanced process, also much more, also processes that are much more simple in that they do not cost you a lot of paperwork. Instead, the users have to fill out an electronic form, make a photo of their ID or passport, take a selfie in most cases, and in some cases, an institution can even want you to record your voice or record a video, and they even go as far as requiring you to blink during a video recording. So this is how this KYC process works. This is how the institutions collect information about their users. This is what it looks like in one of these challenger institutions. This is Revolut. This is N26, a German bank that works in a very similar way as Revolut. Also, in order to register, to open an account, you have to take a picture of your ID and take a picture of your face, and even share your location using the GPS in your phone. This is an option, but and most users will probably not even notice that it is an option. This is yet another piece of information that they will share with that bank. Now, let me now talk about the risks of trying to use an institution that does not offer this exactly this high level of scrutiny in applying those complicated procedures. In a number of cases, ranging from a banking bankruptcy or a cryptocurrency scam or fraud, such as Mt. Gox or DAO. And in case of some payment service providers, such as Payza, which was shut down by the US authorities, in all these cases, the common denominator was the fact that these institutions or these service providers, they were trying to bend the rules. And there is, of course, in this world of shrinking privacy and shrinking anonymity, there is this temptation of using a business that does not apply this level of scrutiny. But then there is this risk. There is also a risk that an utterly legitimate transaction would be tracked by an algorithm, because let's face it, we're talking here about algorithms rather than a human factor, where where a financial institution, whether traditional or a challenger bank such as Revolut in this case, they would freeze the account. And in some, this is a real case. That's why part of these slides, at least the case here, which you can see here in the Polish language, it comes from a client of mine whose bank account was frozen by Revolut, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. Another one was taken from the net. That's why it's in English, but it also shows you that it is not such an uncommon event. And in this particular case, we're talking about a small-time entrepreneur, a lady who's basically who is a fashion designer, and she helps to dress certain celebrities on a number of TV shows, and she has a full wardrobe of various attractive clothes, which she sells, and she accepts payments to her Revolut account. And now, guess what? For over a week, she cannot persuade Revolut from freezing that account, and she has trouble explaining to the Revolut her what seems to be a rather down-to-earth business model, and we need to understand whether she is successful in regaining access to her account. Now, here are a couple of technical issues that I want to run through really quickly because we're out of time. Here are a couple of typical reasons why a bank would freeze an account, or in some cases, which, by the way, I have dealt with, the public prosecutor issues an order to freeze an account. Normally, how this phenomenon starts is through another algorithm, which and it is quite predictable, in fact, how these algorithms are set. They are very sensitive towards any sort of non-typical money transfer, and especially international money transfers. And by non-typical international money transfers, I mean transfers that are irregular, or they concern certain category of goods, such as luxury goods, or oil, or cryptocurrency. That those are the categories that are flashing red lights in financial, across the financial sector. When there is a large number of pay-ins or payouts, and also when there is a large number of pay-ins just below a given threshold, that naturally flashes a red light, because this triggers a suspicion that someone is trying to circumvent the threshold rules. Also, money transfers to so-called blacklisted countries, significant amounts transferred, and particularly significant amount of transfers related to virtual assets. So, of course, also cryptocurrencies and tokens. And also cases when this is one case with which I have dealt, and successfully we have managed to lift a freezing order, which was brought about by the fact that a certain customer of one financial institution that we were representing was trying to cancel a number of transfers, and they were not giving a particular reason, and they were basically making a complaint, and without specifying any particular reason for a refund, and that raised certain interest in the bank. The bank sent reports to the public prosecutor. The public prosecutor issued an order to freeze that account. We have managed to challenge that in court. So, in conclusion, you have to realize that full anonymity is really scarce these days. It is extremely difficult to build, to adopt solutions which would enable to appear totally anonymous. You heard Jonathan's presentation, in which he was talking about a rather complicated hybrid structure. If you think that to make a transfer, let's say for 20,000 euro, you have to build a structure just to make sure that you stay totally anonymous, then it tells you the extent, it makes you realize the extent to which these rules have caused the ruin of the principle of anonymity. The second conclusion is, if you want, particularly in an effort to escape these rather strict rules, you want to choose a niche institution, a niche company, a niche solution, do your own research. Be very careful. Beware of solutions that seem so good that your common sense would tell you that they cannot be true. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions and you do not have the time to stay during the Q&A, please use these contact details. You can easily reach me.